All right, tonight we're gonna make a pasta dish with some ground beef, some kielbasa sausage. Here's some of the spices that we plan on using. Start off with a little bit of olive oil. We're gonna go ahead and dice this onion up. And I have a marinara sauce or a red sauce that I made. You'll have to watch the other video on that one. But we're gonna go ahead and get started with dicing the onion first. Okay, before we dice our onion, we wanna make sure we put a towel here so our cutting board doesn't slide. Because if you have it just straight on the surface, your cutting board will slide and there's chances of you cutting yourself. So we're first gonna start with the onion here. We're gonna go ahead and peel one side off here. Peel this other side off here. What I like to do is peel back so it actually brings some of that skin out. Cut here with a knife, peel that onion right off. Put that to the side. Now you're gonna come here, cut this onion in half. Make lines, don't cut all the way through the onion. 3/4 of the way through the onion. And then go ahead and make lines this way. And what we're doing is we're creating a dice. As you see, we're creating a dice. You can turn your onion this way. You see some nice diced onions on that side. We're gonna go ahead and do the same thing on this side. Once again, 3/4 of the way with the onion. Line it this way. Once you line it this way, go ahead and do your dice. The trick is when you're cutting, curve your fingers like this so you don't cut your nail or your finger. And go ahead and place it this way. Now we have some diced onions, and now we'll be on to our next step. All right, now we're gonna put the onions on a plate here since we already have them prepped. So what we're doing now is basically we're getting our mise en place together, which is basically to get all your prepped items first set up before you start heating up the pan and actually cooking what your ingredients. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm only gonna really use only half of this sausage. So we'll put the other half there. Okay, now we're gonna start slicing the sausage. Once again, the C is what you want to follow. So place the C here so you don't cut your fingers. And we're gonna go ahead and start slicing the sausage. You wanna make sure your knife is nice and sharp, so obviously you don't cut your finger. And at the same time, if you C-cup your fingers like this, you won't have to worry about the knife sliding. If this knife slides, see, it's not cutting anything there. Now we'll go ahead and put this to the side and we're gonna move on to our next step. Okay, now that we have our onions and sausage diced, we have a hot pan here. You wanna make sure your pan is hot. We're gonna go ahead and put a little bit of olive oil down. As you can see, it's got a little bit of heat. You want to hear that sound when you're sauteing. Now we're sauteing it. As it's sauteing, we're going to go ahead and add our sausage. You do want it to be nice and hot like this so you can get a nice sear on what you're cooking. While that's searing real quick, we're gonna go add a little bit of fresh garlic, saute up a little bit. And you wanna go ahead and let it saute up for probably like a good minute, where you see a nice sear on the sausage itself, and the onions are starting to caramelize. You're brown on your onions means that you're caramelizing your onions. Now that we've gotten to this point where everything's nice and caramelized, we're going to go ahead and add our ground beef. Now what I do is I'll keep my onions and sausage to this side of the pan while my raw ground beef cooks on the other side, continuing to still stir up what we have in the pan on this side. You are seeing a little bit of smoke coming up, or steam, which that's expected because you actually have fat in there, so the fat's starting to render. While that's go ahead, it's about halfway through there, we're going to go ahead and add some of our seasonings to it. We're going to add a little bit of the onion powder. We're going to add a little bit of garlic powder. We're going to add a little bit of our Italian seasonings, which is oregano, basil, thyme, a little mixture of all that since we are making Italian pasta. We want to go ahead and continue to let this cook. And then after this cooks, I'll show you our next step. Okay, so as you can see, our meat is nice and brown. Our sausage is nice and brown. Our onions are caramelized. Our garlic is caramelized. But we have a lot of this fat that we don't want. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring it over here. And what I do is I have a strainer set up with a bowl underneath it. And what that's going to do is going to separate the fat. It's going to keep the fat from the actual strainer. So let's go ahead and strain that there for about a good 10 to 15 seconds. You want to sit there. Go ahead and lift it so you can see that the all that fat, you don't want that fat in your pasta when you're cooking it. So we're going to go ahead and strain that. Alright, once we've strained that, we're going to go ahead and bring this bowl with us, so we don't want to drip any of this oil onto the burner, because if you do that, that will cause a fire. You don't want to cause any fires while you're cooking. So now that we've strained it, we're going to go ahead and return it to our pan that we started with. The reason why you return it to that same pan is because a lot of that flavor from the herbs, the fat, the sausage is still in this pan. And you want to take advantage of that. You don't want to wash the pan because then you lose all that. So I'm going to go ahead and let it heat up a little longer, let it get up to temperature. Once it heats up again, we're going to go ahead and add some of that fresh marinara sauce, or the red sauce that we made. I'll go ahead and make another video, like I said, on how to make this sauce. But we're going to go ahead and add that to this. What we're going to allow to do is that once you add this sauce to the actual meat, we're going to go ahead and allow it to simmer. And to simmer means basically to bring down your heat and allow the herbs, seasonings, and sauce to be absorbed by the meat. So we're going to go ahead and let this simmer for about 2-3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes max, just to get those herbs and flavors throughout the sauce. And then all you got to do with this is go ahead and cook pasta with it. You can top it off. Occasionally what I like to do is, even though I top it with Parmesan cheese, I'll go ahead and add a little Parmesan cheese to the actual sauce. So you have a little bit of extra flavor into your meat sauce. Off a little bit of rotini pasta. First things first is you want to get a pot with water. I'm going to go ahead and fill that pot about 3/4 of the way up. The reason why I'm going to do that is once the water reaches the boiling temperature, it'll start a roll, and you'll see what I mean once we get there. We have our flame nice and hot, so we're going to go ahead and slide our pot on top of that. And what I do is, for it to catch temperature pretty quick or get hot pretty quick, I'm going to go ahead and cover it with the lid. We're going to give it about 2 to 4 minutes to go ahead and heat up to a rolling temperature. Once it hits that rolling temperature, I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so I can see from our lid that we're actually boiling, which means our water temperature has reached 212 or above. Now when you remove the lid, make sure that you pull the lid away from you. You don't want to have that steam come at your face. So pull the lid this way so the steam goes that way. And as you can see, our water is boiling. We have a little bit of a roll going on. That's where your water actually is surfacing this way. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of oil to it. The reason why I'm adding oil to the water is preventing the water the pasta from actually sticking, and helps with your boil over as well. Now remember, your pasta is awfully full cooked, so don't want that. So drop your pasta in there. Once you drop your pasta in there, go ahead and stir it up. And now what it's going to do is it's going to actually come back to a boil again. And we're going to go ahead and let this boil for about 8 to 9 minutes, depending on what type of pasta you want. Now if you want al dente, you'll probably do about 6 minutes, 6 to 7. Just taste it, pull a piece of pasta out of there, taste it so you can figure out which texture it is, which I'll show you once we get to the cooking pasta, the part of this pasta dish that we're doing here. As you can see here, we're still boiling the pasta, but we're actually continuing to stir that pasta. Once we actually get done with that cooked pasta, it's going to contain less starch once it's cooked. So this is something we're going to continue to stir up till our time is up, and after that we'll show you the next step. Okay, so we've been cooking the pasta for about 8 to 9 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and pull one out so we can taste it to see how tender it is, whether it's al dente or is it soft of a cook of a pasta. Now, I just tried it, and it's nice and soft, so a little bit of a bite to it, so it's a little al dente. So we're gonna go ahead and move on to our next step. Okay, so we've carried the pot over to a colander or a strainer. Now be careful when you pour this into the strainer. Turn the pot this way so you don't burn yourself with the steam that's coming off the pasta. We're gonna go ahead and show you the next step now. So we've strained the pasta. We're gonna go ahead and put it in this bowl we have here. And we're gonna follow that first step we did. We're gonna add a little bit of oil to it. We definitely don't want our pasta sticking. And what the oil does is keeps the pasta from sticking to each other. Now, if you're gonna eat this immediately, then go ahead and toss it with the olive oil. You can season it if you like with a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. If we're not gonna eat this right now, we're gonna go ahead and cool this, and once we cool it, we'll add some oil to it as we store it so it doesn't stick together. Okay, now that we've got our pasta nice and heated with a little bit of olive oil, we're gonna go ahead and plate up a little bit of this pasta for some dinner tonight. So we got some rotini pasta there, which we have olive oil, and we season it just a little bit. We have our lovely meat sauce with sausage and kielbasa. Make sure you get that nice and spread evenly over the pasta. You could also toss it if you like. I like my sauce on top, so that's how we're gonna do that. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab a little bit of that Parmesan cheese. Top it over Parmesan cheese, and if you'd like, you could always garnish it with some fresh basil or some fresh parsley. Thank you very much for watching, and enjoy that sausage meat sauce tonight.